All right, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for attending the Board of Aldermen meeting on Tuesday, July 5th. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Philly.
Here.
Alderman Nemeth.
Here.
Alderman Cleve.
Here.
Alderman Gendron.
Here.
Alderman Presley.
Here.
Alderman Eversmeyer.
Here.
Alderman Lesh.
Here.
Administrator Roth.
Here.
Attorney Jones.
Here.
Chief Milius. Collector Kelly. Public Works Commissioner Bergerman. Director of Community Development Myers.
Here. Mr. Myers.
You're here. All right, if everybody would please rise and remove your hats for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if Pastor Tim Reeves would please come forward for our prayer.
Sorry. I don't have a word tonight for anybody, so good. It's just a prayer. Father God, we come before you in the mighty name of Jesus tonight, Lord. I thank you, Father, for this opportunity to come together. Lord, as your word declares, we're iron sharpening iron when we come together. Come, let us reason together. I pray, Father, that your Solomon wisdom would just flow in this place tonight. I pray, Holy Spirit, you would just bring a peace into this place. I thank you, Lord, that for everyone that's standing before me and everyone who is sitting behind me, God, I just thank you for each and every one of them, God. I just pray that all things would work together for good because we love you and we're called to your purpose. It's in your mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
All right, do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Make a motion to approve.
I have a motion by Alderman Presley. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Alderman Nemeth. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting on June 21st, 2022?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Alderman Eversmeyer. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Alderman Gendron. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we'll move on to presentations in regards to presentation of the Mayor Commissioner of Officer Michael Soriano. Officer Soriano here tonight?
He's here. I just saw him downstairs.
It was just a moment. We got to him closer on the agenda than he thought. There he is. Got this. How are you doing tonight?
Hot.
All right, well, we're going to officially give you the oath of office.
All right.
Raise your right hand, repeat after me. I
I,
state your name.
Michael Soriano,
Police officer,
police officer,
being first duly sworn on my oath,
being first duly sworn on my oath,
state that I possess
state that I possess
all of the qualifications
all of the qualifications
prescribed by law
prescribed by law
for the position of a police officer
for the position of a police officer
of the City of Pacific,
of the City of Pacific,
State of Missouri,
State of Missouri,
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the State of Missouri,
and the State of Missouri,
the provisions of all laws
the provisions of all laws
of this state
of this state
affecting cities of the fourth class,
affecting cities of the fourth class,
and the ordinances of
and the ordinances of
the City of Pacific,
the City of Pacific,
State of Missouri,
State of Missouri,
and will faithfully
and will faithfully
demean myself
demean myself
as City Police Officer
as City Police Officer
of the City of Pacific.
of the City of Pacific.
Congratulations and welcome aboard.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again,
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Since I have public speaking cards, do we just read this and then do we move on to this, or do I have these guys, call these guys up to talk about this?
Call them up during the public hearing.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our public hearing. Madam Clerk, would you please read the public hearing, or open, so we can open the public hearing?
A public hearing to hear comments on an application for a rezoning of 8.002 acres owned by Barbara Alt, Section 14, Township 4, Range 2 East, known as Lot 1 Alt Place, PTSESEN of North Industrial Drive, Pacific, Missouri, Franklin County Parcel ID number 19-6-14.0-034-036.200, and the 40 acres owned by Barbara Alt and John Timothy Alt, Diana Kathleen and Philip Bradley Alt, known as Longitude Northwest Southeast Section 14, Township 43, Range 2 East, Pacific, Missouri. Franklin County Parcel ID 19-6-14.0-0-099-035.100. Applicant requesting rezoning of both parcels to M1 Light Industrial, property currently zoned NU non-urban district.
All right, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. I do have some speaker cards, so I will call some individuals up for the comments in regards to this. First, I'd like to call Paul Alt up to the podium, please. If you will state your name and address for the record, please.
Paul Alt, 1829 Denton Road.
Okay, and just so everybody knows, there will be a 5-minute time limit.
I won't be that long.
All right.
First, I want to clear up that we are Alt Farm, and we are not the ones asking for the rezoning, as it says in the city's administrator report. It's Barbara and Alt and her children. There's a few things I'd like to have documented here. First off is we've never received a letter on the rezoning. So, I mean, we attended the planning and zoning, but I never received any type of notification. My father's never received any type of notification on that. Next, the property to the east of the rezoning needs to have one common continuous fence on the property border, and we talked about that in planning and zoning. And the fence I'd like to have completed before the construction starts. And we talked to the future owner, and they said that they would work with me on that. Another thing is that the terraces on the property, it's going to be cut directly in half, and there's I know there's could be a potential issue for water flow coming off onto the property, and I know there's a lot of water issues with this development and surrounding properties, so I just want to make sure it wasn't negatively affect the water flow. And another is that there was talk about a second entrance, and I can see the issue where a second entrance would be necessary to ease the potential congestion, and the city needs to make sure the developer would create a road off Industrial Drive that's large enough to accommodate the heavy flow of traffic that you wouldn't have to have a second entrance. And another issue, you know, a preliminary plan we saw today that said it was going to acquire 1.87 acres of our property included with the plan to make the road feasible. I just don't understand how a plan is made and shared on our property when nothing has been done to acquire it yet. I'm only making road suggestions on someone else's property development because it seems like there's been numerous suggestions from the city on how our property needs to be developed. For example, it was stated in planning and zoning that a road to Denton or a road to Jefferson used our land. Our family has been established here for over 100 years. If or when we sell our property, we'll put them on the list of people that have made prior offers. As I said in the planning and zoning meeting last week, we have to accept change and welcome growth, but we have to be sure that the plan for the development is planned and executed to the highest extent, because there's not much prime development left in the city to develop. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I would like to ask Gary Meadows to please come forward. Good evening. If you would also state your name and address for the record.
Name is Gary Meadows, and I own 2010 Highway N in Pacific here. I'm speaking out today in opposition to this project. I spoke out against it at the meeting last week and didn't seem to do much good at that point. In fact, all of the comments were negatively about the project. But I'm here to talk today about a couple of major issues, or a couple of issues. One procedural, one really substantive. Procedural issues is I was reviewing the application again further today, and it's interesting that on at least one of the parcels, there's 3 owners listed, but only one of them applied for an application. So I'm not sure why the city if the city is willing to let that slide, or if each of the owners of the property have to commit to what's said in the application, or whether one person can do it unilaterally. 2, a more meaningful issue, a more substantive issue is, as a part of that application, the applicant is supposed to describe the estimated impact on the proposed use on the surrounding properties. There's not word one said in that application about the surrounding properties, not word one. And the reason for that is I think they realize that brings with it a large number of issues, not the least of which is the water issues. I've heard much talk about the water issues down here, and I think it's been a sort of a perpetual problem as the city has developed. In fact, the board last week basically warned the applicant, or warned the contractor, not a drop of water should leave your property because of any buildup or because of any development. And of course, you and I all know that once things go into place, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Now, we live just to the west of this planned development, and I would just pass out very briefly just a few documents that I wanted to talk about.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I just put in front of you some documents that I pulled off of various internet and some of the information from the topography surveys. And on the first page, I would just note, if you'll see, I've written in creek. We are the property just north of where the creek lies, just to the west of the Alt property. That creek, as I understand it, feeds from any number of other areas to the west of our property. And as Highway N develops with its Highway N project, all it's going to do is increase the burden on that creek. If you look at page 1, the creek it's going to necessarily, basically, you can see I put the arrows, the creek runs to the east, or to the west, sorry. Maybe I'm getting that wrong. Anyway, the creek runs toward West Lake, and it comes up, and you can actually see on this map where the creek runs in the forested area. Now, the reason that's forested is because you can't do much with it, at least without changing the terrain of it. And one of our major concerns is what's going to happen if and when they start trying to develop something and destroy the natural water flow through there. As more and more water flow goes into that creek, it's got nowhere to go. But as soon as they develop that property, it's either going to backflow on our property, on the property just to the south of us, and then move on to West Lake. And so the water issue is a serious, serious problem. And I don't know that anyone's accounted for that. Let me just walk through the others to see if there's anything I wanted to point out. The second page, I just wanted to point out where we are relative to Highway N. That's where they're putting in a new storage or a new drainage easement for the stormwater. We were just there this weekend after it rained. It's incredible how full that creek gets just with one rain. So if we start burdening it with more houses, which is what's going to happen on the Highway N project, and then if there's any destruction of this forested area to the side of it, or that creek, I can't imagine where that water is necessarily going to go, but what I do know is it's going to destroy the property around it, which is one of the reasons I said they didn't describe what their impact will be on the surrounding property. And also, to direct you to page 5, well, let me see. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, page 7. I'll just skip ahead with my limited time. That's simply a measure of the topography of the way the land slopes. And I've drawn the red square. That is where the platted area, that's where the 40 acres is. You can see it flows downhill to the north. And so what's going to end up happening is any water that they don't account for is necessarily going to be going onto somebody else's property, be it mine or Westlake's, or to the south of us. So bottom line is we are absolutely opposed to this as it is, or if the city is intent on going forward with allowing industrial development, which I am opposed to in general, because I think it's going to destroy the area, at a minimum, any ordinance that reflects the improvement of the rezoning should either limit the amount of space they can use or prohibit the developer from getting rid of any of the forested areas or the creek areas. I mean, those have been there a long time, and the reality is you start messing with those and you're going to destroy the area around it. So I would ask the aldermen to say no to this proposition. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have Anna Meadows.
Hi, my name's Anna Meadows. I am the one that lives at 2010 Highway N, and before I start off, I've got some paperwork too I want to hand out to you guys. So I just want to make sure you guys have that before I start talking about it. I know last week we spoke about, again, the water that came out and how Pacific has always seemed to kind of have a problem with the water runoff that occurred due to the development that has been taking place.
Thank you.
Now, in these packets, I went to the U.S. Soil Conservation, Water and Soil Conservation Office up in Union and got some topographic maps, and also have some photos of where the creek lies. So, like I mentioned, we talked about the serious water concerns that occurred along with the runoff coming from this property. And after looking at a preliminary conceptual map that I received today, little has been done to actually address the water problems except for putting retention ponds that'll basically protect more or less the industrial park that's being put up. So little has been done to address the north and northwest areas, and it's totally disregarded the creek that's there as well. If that said creek were to be disturbed, major water issues would occur, and this was discussed with Jerry and Chuck up at the Soil Conservation Office in Union, and after receiving all of the information and looking at all the documents, they were in complete agreement that it would do nothing but harm. So the other issue, like my dad mentioned earlier, was the additional strain that's going to be put on this creek due to the Highway N project, which is going to happen no matter what, which is understandable. But the drainage system just will add more pressure to the creek. I guess it was Friday or Saturday, it rained pretty hard for half a day, and that creek was completely flooded as it was just half a day. So just imagine it in the springtime with the additional sewer drainage and rain that we normally see there. So if the creek is disturbed, heavy flooding will occur on multiple properties, more or less my property, Craig's property, along with some of the properties that are in Westlake too. And so all I'm really asking right now is that the creek or existing waterways are not disturbed in order to make sure that there will be no drainage issues. Or at least the drainage issues will be addressed beforehand. So, because like my dad said, once you rezone and they're able to do whatever, you can't really go back to fix it in the end of it all. So I was just hoping that you guys would take that into consideration and think about the other properties that'll be affected. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Meadows?
Yes.
Oh, when was this acquired? Is it recently?
Today.
So this plan is got a date of like the last
I
month?
didn't get a date on it, but it was from today. I received it today.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I would ask Larry Wallace to please come forward.
Name's Larry Wallace. I live at 1682 Westlake Court. My property backs up to the proposed 40 acres. Currently, there's a grove of trees, a bunch of trees. It's called the Commons area. And I think there was a misunderstanding that that was part of the buffer zone, could be used as part of the buffer zone for this development of the 40 acres. Something else would have to be done because those trees are the commons area of the subdivision. And currently there's a 6x6 woven wire fence that designates the property line of the subdivision that's back there. So if we put a buffer zone, it would have to be more out into the field. And currently, just to the B1 lot to the east of my house, there's a drainage, part of the drainage system, stormwater system. There's an in section that picks up water. There's a grove of trees that go to towards the southwest in that 40 acres. That in section and the pipe that goes with it picks up water out of those tree areas, and I don't know how much of the farm ground, but that farm ground slopes probably a good several hundred feet to the south, and that all drains to the north. My question is, we're currently picking up water from this subdivision. I don't know if the current pipe sizes would be big enough. And I think also that it should be put in the plans that when they lay out the lots for these proposed industrial buildings, if this goes through, that each person who buys one of these lots and puts a business on it, they should be made to be put in detention basins that picks up the drainage water off of their parking lots. So all that water doesn't just run out into their parking lot, into the street, and then possibly flooding into our subdivision. So far, I haven't had any flooding issues, but people back to the west of me have with this water that comes across N Street. And so I think a good study of the potential water problems should be done. I know everybody, I'm sure they'll be made to have an environmental study made on this. I used to work in civil engineering, so I know a lot of the things that has to be done before, the preliminary plans and all that. But the biggest thing is the potential flooding that could occur into Westlake subdivision. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Joyce Ronholm, did I say that correctly?
You did.
Perfect.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
My name is Joyce Ronholm, and we live at 1698 Westlake Court. We are in the subdivision that is north of the said 40 acres of farmland now. Larry mentioned the rain that we had Saturday. My husband and I, he is always checking to see how much rain we get. So in 24 hours, we received 1.5 inches on Saturday. We have a culvert to our west, and with all the honeysuckle and everything that's filled in, we can't see it in the summer, but you can hear it rushing. And we are fortunate that we set up a little bit from the culvert because we would flood if we did not. On the other side of the culvert, the home does flood. Just if we get 1.5 inches, she's got water over about a third of her backyard. And as you go on down, it gets greater to the west. That's one of my concerns as far as the water runoff is concerned. The other is, in talking to Mr. Conway last Tuesday, he indicated to us that he had a buffer of 50-plus feet behind all the homes. And I said, well, would you show me on the map what that buffer is? And he pointed to the HOA's trees. We have common ground that is foliage and trees. And he was going to come up to our fence line, our own personal home fence lines. And he said, well, that was his all the way out. And 2 or 3 of us tried to explain to him that those were not his trees. They belong to the HOA. And so everyone that lives in that subdivision that pays into the HOA fees, that's their property, even though they don't live next to it. So we had asked if we could have more of a buffer with the zoning commission board, and they recommended 50. He said he would do 30, but he already had 50 in the trees. I just want to make sure that when you go to make this decision, that you understand those trees are not for him to claim. They belong to the HOA. And so we're asking for more of a buffer if this goes through, which we would like to not see it go through because of the water issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody else that would like to come to the podium and speak, please? If you would like to come forward, since we are in the public hearing section. Okay, I will get to you right after he's done. If you'll state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Dan Conway with Conway Contracting. My address is 3001 Spruce Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63103. I had submitted a drawing. We kind of did a conceptual plan, and there's been a lot of good feedback from this meeting. And, you know, what you've seen around in this area, there hasn't been a lot of good engineering or very much engineering at all in this area, and a lot of the previous developers didn't put any detention basins in or anything like that. So you've got a lot of these existing issues that are here, and what I've shown on the drawing that I submitted today is that, you know, we are putting in, you know, approximately we think we're going to need about 5 detention basins. You either would do kind of like park detention basins, or you would do it, you know, property by property, but we're going to be following, you know, your current standards and codes. And something that hasn't been addressed is really the water quality in this area. You've got just kind of water running everywhere, and the last person or developer that's been in there hasn't done a lot of people any favors. We're showing you what we're going to do. The trees that we are showing that are in our buffer on that drawing are staying, and we are creating that 50-foot, you know, buffer. And I show on that drawing the contours on how the water will be flowing off the property. And in every low point and area of the site, we're capturing all that water, which is not happening right now. So, you know, there's a chance that really this development is going to improve the situation at hand, where there's a lot of these basic engineering, and I am a civil engineer. I didn't do civil engineering, I am a civil engineer. And, you know, the way that we're approaching the project, I think it's going to be a benefit to all, and the impact will be a good impact, because it's going to probably solve some of these issues, and maybe some other things can be done down the road where there's some development, you know, just south of us that doesn't have some of these good engineering practices in place. You know, there's a lot of things that are missing, and, you know, this could be one of the first developments where, you know, we're doing everything that we should be doing, and we are doing and following good engineering practices.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir, you would like to come forward? Oh, did I? Oh. Are you Robert?
Yes.
All right, I wasn't exactly sure what this was in regards to, so please.
Robert Van Allen, Continental Products, 6 Midwest Drive. Got a couple things to.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, can Chief have one, please? Oh. Thank you.
Poor chief.
The first picture is a picture of my plant when we get a heavy rain. The second picture shows a view down Industrial Drive to Midwest. I've been fighting this battle since the 90s. It's quite expensive when it does happen. It doesn't happen that often, but it happens. And behind the pictures is an engineering report from Cochrane. It talks about all the problems in the Daly Industrial Park, and basically everything is undersized. And all I want to do is make a point that there's a huge problem in the Daly Industrial Park, and we can't add to it, and at the same time, it would be nice to fix it while we're considering this other opportunity. I would actually like to buy a lot in this new development. So that's all I got.
All right, thank you. All right, is there anybody else that would like to speak during the public hearing? Yes, ma'am.
And I live in Westlake, and my property is one of the ones right up to that creek. And I am the second farthest to the west in Westlake.
Yeah.
So the creek really fills up for me, and it gets up to, my property thankfully goes up a little bit, so it's not flooding my yard, but that creek is gonna eventually take my fence down, and I've talked to the city about it in the winter and asked for suggestions and help, and they told me to go to my subdivision, and I went to my subdivision, and they told me to go to Franklin County, and I tried Franklin County, and everybody just kept sending me back and saying, try somebody else, try somebody else. If you're adding more water to that creek, you're giving me all kinds of trouble, all kinds of trouble.
All right, thank you. All right, anybody else?
Can I say one thing, or am I allowed to speak?
Sure, come, if you don't mind coming back to the,
No, that's fine. Just one thing. I just want to respond to one point that the applicant made. On page 6 of what I handed out, it's not a great copy, but it shows some of the topographical measurements. And if you look at the upper left corner of the square where it says 500 and 485 right above it, basically it's clear that property tilts to the north. And so then when my daughter passed out what we became aware of, this industrial conceptual site plan, and the applicant indicated that they planned to take care of any water coming off the site. There is nothing in the north that takes care of any of that. Basically, if you get rid of that creek, the water just gets dumped into right along the forest line, and at that point, I don't know where it goes, but they certainly haven't accounted for that at all. So I just wanted to correct that one statement. Thank you very much.
thank you. All right, yes, sir.
wanted to follow up that the engineer that we have on the project is Cochran Engineering, and like I said, they're already looking at the farther south to this park, and they understand some of the issues that are ongoing there, some of the water issues. And like I said, we're trying to make sure, be good stewards, and make sure we don't have the water issues in this development here. In the corner that the gentleman was just talking about, in the northeast corner, we're actually showing currently a detention basin, but you'd still have the overflow of it to represent what some of the original creek flows are. What you're trying to do is get the difference in runoff captured in these detention basins, and that's what the goal is here. So that is a low spot. We are designing to handle any additional flows there and really, keep the difference in runoff the same. So that's what you're trying to do. And we're not eliminating a creek or anything like that. The goal is not to, influence, that creek any more than it currently is.
Thank you. All right. If there are no other public comments, then we're going to go ahead and close this public hearing. All right, moving on to public participation. I do have 2 more speaker cards that were not in relation to the public hearing. So first, I would like to call Sam Dean.
Hello. So my name is Sam Dean. I live at 251 Northwoods Drive, Pacific, Missouri 63069.
And real quick, you will have 5 minutes as well.
Sure. Amanda's handing out some supportive material, which actually already did make it into your packets this evening. The only thing that has changed is part of the letter of request, which is including $1,000 request. But let me explain the project first. So last November, I did submit a grant on behalf of the Pacific Partnership to Phillips 66 to their PR department because they have a pipeline project that's coming through Pacific, and they're looking for ways to give back to communities that they're impacting. So the grant that I submitted for them was for safety, and it was for a safety aspect in regards to our events that we have downtown, that we have on an annual basis that draw thousands of people to our downtown. They park in the commuter lot that's located in between the Burlington Northern and the Union Pacific Railway. And so we've on many occasions, I actually have photos to prove it, have people parking in the commuter lot and trotting right across the tracks where they're not supposed to get to the event area. We've seen at this year's car show where I don't know if it's the police department or if it's the street department, but they have to put up snow fencing and caution tape to prevent those people from illegally crossing, because it's a real danger concern when they're coming back across in the evening when it's dark, they can't see, possibly have had a few too many drinks, and they're tripping across the tracks, potentially creating a very bad safety situation. So I wrote this grant. We got roughly $25,000 less the transfer fee on the grant, and that was to cover a fence, chain link fence to be erected on the site. So what you have is the map of the location right there in between the railroad tracks. And so we got bids for essentially 1,650 foot of fence surrounding the north, south, and west portions of the commuter lot, as well as the north portion of the partnership lot, which is just across the street because we also have events there. We also have a lot of train viewing there. So that is the project. We ultimately, my board just selected a bidder today, and that is a local, Pacific local company, and they do a lot of work. They've worked with the city before. They've not directly worked with us, but they're around the community, and they've supported us in other ways as well. So really what we're asking here today is for your official permission to place the fence along those sections of the commuter lot on city property, and then as well to request the difference in the quoted amount versus what we got from the grant, which is it's $1,000. So that is the request on behalf of the partnership that I have for you guys tonight. And I believe it's in your agenda, so you guys will be talking about it at a later time. So I'll stay for that if you guys have any questions. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
All right. And then I do have one more speaker card, Melissa Layton. You filled out a speaker card? Would you like to come forward, please? Okay, that's fine. You can, you get to voice your comments during the public participation section.
Okay.
If you'll state
My
your-
name is Melissa
Yep.
Lawton. I'm at 214 South 3rd Street. I have an issue with the plow storage facility wanting to go next door to my home. The first concern I have with the storage facility is the size of it on the small lot. It does back up to the commuter lot. We have several kids that play, ride bikes, you name it, et cetera. Not a very big area, so yes, we do have to use the road, go back and forth. And looking on the site plan, the lot is, or the building looks to be pretty big. And then last week, we spoke of putting a fence around it. I'm not sure. Several things were brought up last week, but I still haven't seen the exact plans for this building. My second concern is the water thing, which does seem to be an issue around Pacific. When it does rain, my front yard becomes a little bit of a lake. My neighbor's yard gets a big pond in the back. And then this little lot that we are speaking of, the backside does kind of go up. So anything that's happening, any sort of digging or whatever may go on, could cause an issue to my residents. It already goes in my basement as well, but it's manageable. So if this is to happen, unfortunately, I have to be worried about any other things making it worse what we already have. Another thing that I just wanted to bring up, I was reading over the codes, a bunch of the city codes. The square footage of the property in your codes states that it's the lot is too small for a building. The width of the lot's too small for a building. And also looking at the site plan, I believe there should be 10 feet clearance from the next structure would be my home. And looking at it, it does not look that way whatsoever. But yeah, my biggest concern is obstruction of the view from the commuter lot and the water issue that I already have. I just don't want to add to it as well. I'm not terribly opposed to something going on there. I would just like to see an actual plan, because as we spoke last week, there needs to be a bathroom now for it to be considered. But we were told that, okay, I will if I have to. So my biggest thing is I don't see a set plan of what's gonna go on here, just a building to store some plows. And I would just like for you to take a few of these things into consideration before continuing on with any of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
All right. That is the last of the speaker cards that I have. So therefore, we will move on to our agenda. And we will go ahead and move on to new bills. Madam Clerk, would you please read Bill number 5148?
An ordinance revising the terms of the members of the Tax Increment Financing Commission in the City of Pacific.
Right, do I have a sponsor for this bill?
I'll sponsor this bill.
I have a sponsor, Alderman Presley. Moving on to the next bill. Madam Clerk, would you please read Bill number 5149?
An ordinance revising the composition of the Park Board in the City of Pacific.
Do I have a sponsor of this bill?
I'll sponsor that.
I have a sponsor of Alderman Eversmeyer. Madam Clerk, would you please read Bill number 5150?
An ordinance approving a zoning change, map amendment, from NU non-urban to M1 light industrial for 2 tracts of land totaling approximately 48 acres and being generally described as Lot 1 Alt Place, Franklin County Parcel ID 19-6-14.0-0-034-036.200, the 8-acre tract, and Franklin County Parcel ID 19-6-14.0-0-099-035.100, the 40-acre tract, being generally located at the Industrial Drive, Pacific, Missouri.
Do I have a sponsor of this bill?
I'll sponsor it.
I have a sponsor of Alderman Eversmeyer. Madam Clerk, would you please read Bill number 5151?
An ordinance authorizing a conditional use permit for property located at 210 South Third Street, Franklin County Parcel ID 19-1-12.0-4-003-081.100 in the city of Pacific.
Do I have a sponsor for this bill?
I'll take that one.
I have a sponsor,
And-
Alderman Nemeth.
And I apologize. Do we have time for comment on any of these? Or is that not?
Attorney Jones, do we take comments on the first reading of bills, or do we wait till the second reading?
That would be up to you, Your Honor, but just keep in mind that the bill, which was just read with regard to the zoning change, is just that. It's a zoning change. We don't have a project before us.
Correct.
So we don't have a site development plan, we don't have a subdivision plat, we don't have, any of those things, and so perhaps some of that discussion might be premature, at least in the context of this bill.
Agreed. My only question, if it would be allowed, was, I don't remember the first gentleman's name, about the notification letter, and I just had a question if that's something that actually went out, and if it did, how many were sent?
It was Mr. Paul Alt.
Okay. If that's allowed, I would like to ask that question.
I do not mind allowing you to ask that question about the letters that were sent. Do we know how many were sent? And
I can start. I know that Mr. Alt did not receive a letter. We realized that after the, I guess it was actually before the planning and zoning hearing. I forget exact timing, but no, he did not. It was a mistake on the part of the community development clerk. I don't have the exact number of letters that had gone out. Do you have that, Mr. Myers?
I want to say approximately 30.
Thank you.
All right.
And I'm sorry, one more thing, and that's 175 feet? 185, thank you.
All right. Madam Clerk, would you please read bill number 5152?
An ordinance providing for a waiver of the sidewalk requirement at 1403 West St. Louis Street.
And do I have a sponsor for this bill?
I'll sponsor that.
I have a sponsor of Alderman Eversmeyer. And just for the public's information, when we do new bills, they all get read for the first time, and then at our next meeting is when they'll be read for the second time and voted upon. All right, moving on. Consideration of bills previously introduced. Madam Clerk, would you please read bill number 5144?
An ordinance prohibiting the operation of parking of unregistered vehicles on roadways in the city of Pacific.
Do I have a motion to approve bill number 5144?
Motion.
I have a motion by Alderman Nemeth. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Alderman Cleve. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Nemeth.
Yes.
Alderman Cleve.
Yes.
Alderman Gendron.
Yes.
Alderman Presley.
Yes.
Alderman Eversmeyer.
Yes.
Alderman Lesh.
Yes.
All right. Seeing how we had 6 ayes, therefore the motion passes, and bill number 5144 will become ordinance number 3326. Again, bill number 5144 becomes ordinance 3326. Madam Clerk, would you please read bill number 5145?
An ordinance vacating a section of North Elm Street located south of East Union Street and north of the Union Pacific Railroad right-of-way.
Do I have a motion to approve bill number 5145?
I make a motion to approve.
I have a motion by Alderman Presley. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Alderman Eversmeyer. Is there any discussion?
Yes. I would like to ask about, is there any cost associated with this? When I say cost, not to the city, but to the applicant, requester, whatever. They're basically getting 600 square feet of land. I don't know how that worked in the past, if the road was there, if it wasn't there, if there may be no issue here at all. I don't know. I just, not specifically for this, but it's also looking at future things where maybe a road's no longer used and we vacate it. If it makes land more valuable to somebody, I'm not trying to steal their thunder, but I think the city should be compensated if we're giving land back, or that's my only comment. I don't know what happens there.
Maybe I can start. The city code, if both, owners of both sides of the right-of-way need to petition for the vacation. In this instance, Gallagher Properties LLC owns both sides. By code, if the city does vacate that, then half goes to the property owner on the one side of the road, and then the half goes the other. And there is no compensation. And I would defer to Bob Jones for any statutory requirements there. I've never been in a situation in a vacation where there was any compensation. It would be my understanding, frankly, I doubt that we could actually require that, but.
That's correct. To the extent we're vacating right-of-way, it initially was platted off of the two adjoining parcels. So once it's no longer a public street, it then becomes half to one side and half to the other side. This should be contrasted with a situation where we have excess right-of-way and part of a street that we don't need anymore. We could and sometimes do charge compensation for something like that. But the vacation ordinance is not set up to do that, and it's not required under the circumstances. Now, if there are costs in adding this to the parcels on either side, boundary adjustment, engineering, replatting, subdivision, anything like that, that would be up to the adjoining parcel owners to do that, and they would bear the cost of that.
So we're basically saying that it was land that was already part of the parcel, that we were using the right-of-way, so now we're just saying, never mind, we don't need it anymore?
Right. That would be my understanding of the history here, that it would have come off of those parent parcels at some time in the past.
Okay, that answers it. Thank you.
We've done this a couple of times. We did it near the I-44 underpass, that property over there. I can't think of what street that is. You make that hard left-hand turn, and then there's a road off to the left. And those two new homes went in there, or three homes there. And we vacated the alleyway to make the lots a little bit bigger so they could have a little bit more space for the purpose of that. And we also vacated an alley back behind Bay's ET's building there on the neighboring property. We vacated that alleyway there. There's been a couple others. I mean, it's.
I had one additional question on that. So if this was a right-of-way, we never owned the land. We just had a right-of-way on the two parcels. My concern was that the second building to the west, if it gets sold off, or either one, if it's particularly that building to the west, it doesn't have any way into the back to access it. And so if I'm hearing you correctly, if it's divided in half, even if that western parcel gets sold at some point to someone else, they won't be at the discretion of the person to the east in being able to get to their property, to the rear.
I'm not familiar with access to the parcel, but no parcel can be landlocked, and we wouldn't approve that kind of a subdivision.
Right.
So, yeah, ultimately they would have to deal with that to get any approval from the city.
But as you said, if these are the lots, it's not us getting rid of a 30-foot wide street. If it's already belongs to the parcels, then it would follow that they are going to have rights to access that.
It would,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on Bill number 5145? All right, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Cleve?
Yes.
Alderman Gendron?
Yes.
Alderman Presley?
Yes.
Alderman Eversmeyer?
Yes.
Alderman Lesh?
Yes.
Alderman Nemeth?
Yes.
All right, seeing as how we have 6 ayes, Bill number 545 passes and will now become ordinance 3327. Again, Bill number 5145 will become ordinance 3327. Madam Clerk, would you please read Bill number 5146?
An ordinance repealing the requirement of vehicle registration for vehicles in the city of Pacific.
Do I have a motion to approve Bill number 5146?
Motion.
I have a motion by Alderman Nemeth. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Alderman Cleve. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Gendron?
Yes.
Alderman Presley?
Yes.
Alderman Eversmeyer?
Yes.
Alderman Lesh?
Yes.
Alderman Nemeth?
Yes.
Alderman Cleve?
Yes.
Seeing as how the ayes have this one as well, Bill number 5146 will become ordinance number 3328. Again, Bill number 5146 becomes ordinance 3328. Madam Clerk, would you please read Bill number 5147?
An ordinance changing the name of Route 66 Marketplace Road to Bossy Drive and establishing stop signs and a speed limit thereon.
Do I have a motion to approve Bill number 5147?
I make a motion to approve.
I have a motion by Alderman Presley. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Alderman Eversmeyer. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Presley?
Yes.
Alderman Eversmeyer?
Yes.
Alderman Lesh?
Yes.
Alderman Nemeth?
Yes.
Alderman Cleve?
Yes.
Alderman Gendron?
Yes.
Seeing as how the ayes have this one, Bill number 5147 will now become ordinance number 3329. Again, Bill number 5147 becomes ordinance 3329. Moving on, we have no unfinished business, so we will go ahead and move on to new business. Madam Clerk, would you please read Resolution 2022-42?
A resolution authorizing the filing of an application with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources Financial Assistance Centers State ARPA grant programs for a subaward of federal financial assistance provided to the state of Missouri by the U.S. Department of the Treasury pursuant to Section 602B of the Social Security Act as added by Section 9901 of the American Rescue Plan Act, Publication L number 117-2, March 11th, 2021, 135 Stat 4223-26.
Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2022-42?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion by Alderman Cleve. Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a second by Alderman Presley. Is there any discussion? It seems how there's no discussion. All those in favor of approving Resolution number 2022-42, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Seems how the ayes have it, Resolution number 2022-42 passes. Madam Clerk, would you please read Resolution number 2022-43?
A resolution authorizing and directing the mayor to execute a contract agreement for resurfacing of certain streets as identified in the city's Preventative Pavement Maintenance Program, 2022 Summit Park Drive.
Do I have a motion to approve Resolution number 2022-43?
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion by Alderman Lesh. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Alderman Nemeth. Is there any discussion?
I would just like to say, at least the last time I talked to Steve this is one of the worst subdivision streets we have in town. It's very exciting that we're finally getting the opportunity to get this ground down, properly resurfaced. Hopefully they won't have giant potholes this winter. But it's yet another step in the right direction for us to get our streets right in the city, so it's very exciting.
And I would add that's why I motioned for it.
That's why I was trying to get it in there.
Can I just make one quick comment?
Please.
There's one other small street, Arbor Lane. It's off of Payne, near the school district entrance to the south. Robert Brugman had brought that one to my attention at some point over the last few weeks, and it would be our intent to add that little roadway to this project via a change order. We would have to bring that to the board, very likely we would, but it would at least be our intent to try to negotiate that change order with the contractor.
All right. All right, is there any discussion on Resolution 2022-43? All right, seeing how there's no discussion, all those in favor of Resolution number 2022-43, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, motion carries, and Resolution number 2022-43 passes. Madam Clerk, would you please read Resolution number 2022-44?
A resolution granting permission for the Pacific Partnership to provide for construction of a fence on sections of property owned by the City of Pacific.
Do I have a motion to approve Resolution number 2022-44?
I have some comments. Having just seen this in the packet on Friday, there's some information in there that's saying that it will become the city's maintenance obligation once this is completed. And I was wanting to get some input from the administration on that, what the expected costs are, what's involved in that. I just don't know much about it other than just what was in the packet, and I'd like some clarification on that.
Well, if I could just make a point of order as well, that the resolution does not include the $1,000 contribution that was asked for. So if you're going to act on this resolution tonight, as suggested by Sam, you're going to want to amend the resolution.
Okay, are we able to amend it via motion?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
So maybe include that in your discussion as you.
Okay. So first,
Administration, what are our costs going forward in assuming the maintenance?
I don't have any costs at my fingertips. Robert Brugman is not here tonight. He'd be a better guy to answer that question. When the partnership brought this to us, I was aware that they were applying for a grant. They did it on their own, and obviously were successful in getting it. The location, of course, would be on city property, and so we kind of considered it, I guess, a donation to the city. Once it's on our property, then it'd be subject to our own ownership and maintenance. Maintaining a chain link fence like this, cost should frankly be minimal. We would make sure it was built and constructed to our specifications. Going forward, I mean, if there's damage to it, if there was significant damage, it'd be an insurance claim, but if it was kind of minor, it would just be kind of routine maintenance, I believe. Again, I'm not really the best source of info here, but we would expect, I think, for the maintenance cost to be pretty minimal.
And this was a project that the city was already looking at, or?
No, I mean, we hadn't looked at it specifically. It's been a point of concern as long as I've been in this position, the fact that the railroad tracks are somewhat uncontrolled as far as the crossing from one side to the other. A great example of it was when the big boy locomotive was here. We had people lining the tracks on both sides, and there were a lot of people walking across the tracks that day. Obviously somewhat unsafe. The fencing, of course, would limit that. I suppose you can build fences that people can't get around, but, it's kind of a barrier, obviously. I think it does improve overall safety for those events and other uses. But to answer your question directly, no, we hadn't specifically been looking into building our own fence.
I would like to get some more information on the cost. It does sound like a good project, a good thing to have. I'm not against it, but I would like to see costs, know some definitives. I don't think we need to move on it tonight, and so for that reason, I motion that we table this until our next meeting.
all right, I have a motion on the floor to table resolution number 2022-44 until our next meeting. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to table. Is there any other discussion?
Yes, madam, I would like to discuss this just a little bit. First of all, I think that this is a great project, that it would be a nice addition to our downtown area. First of all, it's a nice-looking fence. I like that they chose black instead of the usual anodized color. I see a lot of chain link fence put up around our town. Never have I seen any repairs being done on any of them. So I agree. I think that there's a minimal maintenance issue here, with the exception of cars hitting it or damaging it in that regard. But again, that would fall under insurance and things like that. I think that seeing the yellow and orange barriers up during this last car show was very detracting from what our city should have represented, and this could prevent that. So I really feel like that this is a very nice project, and the fact that the partnership would take a lead on this and find the money to basically do it for very little cost, I would like to see the project move forward. I would also like to amend the motion to add the resolution to add the $1,000 if we vote on it this evening.
Okay. Well, first we need to vote on the motion to table, and then depending on the outcome of that, we will know what the next steps will or won't be. Is there any more discussion on the motion to table?
Can I talk?
Absolutely.
Can I talk?
Absolutely, Chief.
This fence around the railroad tracks is something that I've been trying to get since I got here. I've made quite a few efforts to try to improve the safety and security of our public events, all the parades and the other things that we have downtown. And having had some experience working in a transit environment and a rail environment, I realize that this is a hazard that really needs to be corrected. And when we talked about getting a fence early on in my term, it was usually kind of cost prohibitive. So I think the partnership's done a great job going out and finding this grant, and I would support this fence going up. I think it's in the right place. I think it has the right kind of appearance for that area. It would cut down on a lot of the work Public Works has to do for every single event, because we ask them to put that snow fencing up to cut down on people that can't pay, aren't paying attention, can't see well at night, and different things like that. So the police department supports it, and we think it'd be a good project to move forward with.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
The only reason I kind of second that for the tabling was not so much I'm for the project, it's the $1,000. There was no discussion where the $1,000 coming from. We just passed our budget down to the penny. So without knowing where that $1,000 is coming from, we're getting ready to hit we don't know where the economy's going. I'll hope that we make the money, our budget, as everybody here knows, the budget's based on a forecast of what money the city's going to bring in. So if we hit a recession, are we going to meet those numbers? So the bottom line is, if we're going to vote on that tonight, I want to know where that's coming from. And that was the only reason I was in favor of tabling it, so we can have that worked out before passing it.
Any other discussion? Can I ask for a roll call vote on this?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on this, based on the discussion that's been had.
And this is the motion to table.
The motion to table, correct.
Alderman Eversmeyer?
Yes.
Alderman Lesh?
Yes.
Alderman Nemeth?
I abstain.
Alderman Cleve?
No.
Alderman Gendron?
No.
Alderman Presley?
No.
All right, so the motion to table fails with a 2-3 vote with one abstention.
Yes.
All right. So I will ask the question, do we have a motion to approve resolution number 2022-44, amended to include the $1,000 to it?
Alderman Presley should make his motion to amend.
To amend first, okay.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to amend the resolution to include the $1,000 for the contribution towards the fence project.
All right, do I have a second to amend that, a second to amend the current resolution to include the $1,000? I'll get it figured out here sooner or later.
I would second it.
All right, so I have a first by Alderman Presley and a second by Alderman Cleve. Is there any discussion around this? All right, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll on the amending the resolution to include the $1,000?
Alderman Lesh?
Yes.
Alderman Nemeth?
I abstain.
Alderman Cleve?
Yes.
Alderman Gendron?
Yes.
Alderman Presley?
Yes.
Alderman Eversmeyer?
Yes. But still want to know where that $1,000 is coming from.
All right.
So it's coming out of somebody's budget, and I'm sure the chief doesn't want it coming out of his.
So we have a vote of 5-0 with one abstention? I'll get it.
Yeah.
I'll figure out the word eventually. To amend the resolution to include the $1,000. So now I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the amended resolution number 2022-44. Do I have a motion?
I'd make that motion.
I have a motion by Alderman Cleve. Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
I have a second by Alderman Presley. Is there any discussion?
Where's the $1,000 coming from?
I think that if you figure up the cost for Public Works to put up snow fencing and to buy T-post and snow fencing over the course of just a couple of years, I think we'll have at least $1,000 savings in that manner. So
I think it would be a general fund reserve is where we would get the money. There's a variety of funds that we could use for this, but I think our general fund reserves would be the easy solution.
All right, and you think there'd be that much savings from?
They put in a lot of time putting those fences up and taking them down.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? All right, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll to approve the amended resolution number 2022-44?
Alderman Nemeth,
I abstain.
Alderman Cleve,
Yes.
Alderman Gendron,
Yes.
Alderman Presley,
Yes.
Alderman Eversmeyer,
Yes.
Alderman Lush.
Yes.
All right, with a vote of 5-0 and 1 abstention, the motion passes and resolution number 2022-44 is official. All right. All right. Mayor's report. I have nothing in addition to report tonight, so we'll keep moving on. City Administrator report?
I have my written report in the packet we are having an open house here on July 21st. I handed out copies of this on the dais. This is East-West Gateway, open house over the Transportation Improvement Program. Our project, 4th Street from Osage South to Denton Road, is included on the draft tip. And so people can make comments at that meeting. There are other meetings, and there's also an online availability for that as well. Other than that, I have nothing additional.
All right, thank you. All right, Chief of Police report.
The only thing I would like to say is that I did get a lot of questions about how many calls we received over the weekend. And on the 4th of July, we received 6 calls for fireworks, which I think is a low number considering the amount of fireworks I heard. But it was safe. We didn't have any injuries or anything like that. So that's the report on it.
That's a good thing. Yes, thank you. All right, Public Works Commissioner Brueggemann is out this evening. Director of Community Development.
So I did prepare a report for you, and it's right here in my hand. It's 4 pages, and I don't think you want me to read this bad boy tonight. I thought it went into the board packet, but I just scanned it, and I didn't see it. It's in there?
It is in there.
Fantastic. All right, so you've got it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I did notice there's one typo. It should be June 3rd through July 1st. So,
I do have a question.
yes.
You're talking about the easements along Highway N. You're saying basically there's 3 remaining property owners. I'd like to talk to you afterwards or something to find out who property owners are and see what we can do, because
Be glad to.
the work's going to be done, so.
There's one that is now been turned over to the city attorney and city administrator. They're collaborating on that one. And then the other 2, though, be happy to share with you. Appreciate the offer. Thank you.
And then there's, you have that you performed occupancy, footing, and foundation inspections.
Mhm.
The bill,
Right.
you're a jack of all trades.
Well, you do what you have to do.
There's no issues with that? I mean, it's.
No, not at all.
Okay.
No,
I
I am
didn't
the
think there
zoning
was if you
officer.
did it, but, just checking. All right, that was it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, you spoke with the developer about potential rezoning. What's that in relation to?
With this developer that was before you tonight.
Okay,
Mr.
so
Conway.
the alt, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney report.
I have nothing to report, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. City Collector report, she was not able to attend tonight. Operations Committee report.
Nothing at this time. I still got to come up with a date that will work for everybody. So
All right.
I will set up a group text and start sending some texts out and see if we can come up with a common date for everybody.
Sounds good. Administrative Committee report.
I failed to send stuff out this morning, but I did talk to Alderman Cleve, and then I'll get a text, and we most likely will have a meeting next Monday at 8 a.m. Most likely. I'll get with all the appropriate parties. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, miscellaneous. We have approved petty cash in the amount of $35.08 for the police department postage. Do I have a motion to approve petty cash?
I make a motion to approve petty cash.
And I will second it.
All right, I have a motion from Alderman Presley and a second from Alderman Cleve. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Report of the city officials. Alderman Nemeth.
I just wanted to say, for those of you that attended the car show / block party, I would hope everybody had a great time, even though it was super hot. It did not rain like it had in previous years. I don't know if that would have helped or hurt, but the partnership did a phenomenal job putting it on. The cars, the dyno test thing, whatever you call it, was amazing. There was only one car that had a minor issue right at the end, but it was a great time, and the fireworks were better than what I saw at Six Flags the last few nights. So very good job to the partnership, the city, and everybody that participated. So thank you. That's all I got.
Alderman Cleve.
I'd like to remind everybody of the park board meeting tomorrow night at 6, which is earlier than normal. Got 2 presentations going on, one for the skate park and then the other from Navigate, talking about the city pool. I would highly recommend that aldermen attend if you're available, because there will be a lot of good information in there. So good reminder. I'll see everyone tomorrow night. And I had one other thing that's not my ward, but I'm sticking my nose in anyway. In our new road that's being built, going to B&H, we've got this beautiful sidewalk coming from CVS to it, and then on the other side we have nothing. And then there's the library that has sidewalks. And I'm assuming we didn't put a sidewalk there because it's not our land, but I'm just wondering if we could put a sidewalk there. It's odd that there's a big gap in the sidewalk right there with the new road.
Do you happen to know, is that?
No, that has to be answered right now. I'm just
You mean south from?
south of
Bossy Drive.
Bossy Drive. I was-
Drive
almost
south
said
to
the wrong
Rose
name.
Lane, and yes. Yes, we could. I mean, we'd have to get easements. I'm not sure what the right-of-way would be there, but very likely we'd have to get easements from the property owner to build it. It would be a project we just need a budget for, plan, design, so forth. It could be done.
Sounded really easy when I said it, but now it sounds really hard. Still think it should be there eventually, maybe not right away, but just
Sure.
odd looking where the sidewalk just doesn't go.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And that was it.
All right.
If I could add to that real quick, Bigfoot has a open house once a year, and that sidewalk, if it were in, would be used extensively on that one event a lot. So, not to mention day to day.
I definitely think it should be there if it could be, so.
Something to look into.
It would be, I have to say, I'd want to look at the CID map to be sure, but I think it would be eligible for CID funds.
Extra bonus.
Yes. I will look at that, and I'll include that in my next report.
I think that may be the reason why it wasn't included before, it's just outside the reach of that boundary.
Yeah, I'm really not sure. It would be an ideal CID project, frankly, in my opinion. But yeah, I'll look into that and include some information in my next report.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Alderman Gendron.
No report.
Alderman Presley.
No report this evening. Thank you, madam.
Alderman Eversmeyer.
Nothing.
Alderman Lesh.
Had a few questions in regard to bill number 5149 for Attorney Jones. The bill number as drafted doesn't address section 140.040, which is in regard to initial terms. And maybe that was something you were still currently looking into, since we don't have a bill on the, well, this one's in relation to the park board, but
I'm sorry, which one was that?
so Bill 5149, the park board bill,
Okay.
we're changing one part of it to reflect the 9 to 5, but there's still section 140.040 that's left with discussing 9 members. Now that's in relation to the initial seat staggering. But that's what you were, what you had researched on all the previous ones. So I was just wondering, because it only dealt with the initial seat staggering, does it need to be changed? Or,
When I looked at it, I didn't think it did, but because it's already happened. Yeah, boy. I think I can rewrite that, even though it commenced on June 1st of 1940. So, but.
well, the reason why it was
Yeah.
a little confusing, and I have a question, because
Right.
what you were reporting on last week with regard to the history bill, you were saying you were modifying that section.
And I did. You're right. You're right. It would certainly be easy enough to do this. We read it for the first time tonight. I can bring it back if you'd like with
Corrections.
with that correction, then it could be amended and read for the second time as amended at the next meeting. Yeah. Sure, I can do that.
And the second one was the history bill. There's nothing on the agenda with that one. Was there's something that prevented you from bringing that forth, or?
I believe there was still further discussion that was being looked into before
Yeah,
that came forward.
I drafted it.
Yes, city attorney drafted it, he sent it to me. We discussed essentially roles, responsibilities of the historical societies provided in the ordinance right now are not, I mean, they're defined to some degree, but there's been recent discussions about what is the role of the historical society relative to the museum and, Red Cedar, and it's just kind of unclear. I spoke by email to Jeff Titter, who I think is the chair of the Historical Society, and there's going to be discussion on that point at the next meeting, July 20th. There's also a section of that code that speaks to general membership, and that too I was unclear on. How does that work? Who are our general members? How do you become a member? So forth. So we felt like we could have moved forward with the ordinance that just simply spoke to the terms and so forth as discussed last week, but we thought maybe there's an opportunity to get a little bit more detail and flesh it out a little bit more fully in the context of Red Cedar.
With regard to the terms, and just to be sure, or bring the point back, that bill was also addressing the reduction from 9 to 5. So that was
Yes.
another important aspect of that, and then also the voting status of the liaison.
Yes, and that was all treated in the draft that I did. As the city administrator indicated, the question, how to characterize the general members, and sort of as a practical matter, anyone who sits in the audience at those meetings has been recognized as a general member, wouldn't you say, Alderman? Yeah, as opposed to a director. And if we want to continue it that way, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. We don't have any formal process for selecting or swearing in general members.
Yeah, and so we could, we could move forward with the draft for the very narrow purposes that we discussed previously, or we could open it up and, be more comprehensive with it. If the board wants us to proceed, just along that narrow path, that's fine. I think we would want to amend the ordinance later, if that's the case, then for these larger purposes as well.
The only thing I have to add to that is just whatever you guys decide, like you said, you found some other issues, whatever you decide, one way or the other, the board did make a motion for you to bring forward a bill, so regardless of what you find to change on those other issues, we would still request that you bring that bill forward to us.
And I'll be happy to leave my draft with you tonight so that you can take a look at it.
Okay. Then the last thing on that was the tourism committee. We're not touching that one. And that it uses the language of an alderman representative. And I just wanted to offer that up for consistency across all these committees. If you just refer to the liaison as alderman representative, just a minor point there.
So do you want legislation to address that?
Well, I'm asking you, that the tourism committee refers to the liaison as an alderman representative. And that's one of the things that's in these committees. Each one refers to an alderman representative as something different. One thing calls an alderman representative, another committee structure calls it a liaison. And as you're drafting it, I would just want to point that out to keep it in mind, because if you have some consistency, then when you write something else that talks about the role of a liaison or alderman representative, all ties in.
Yeah, I think the terms are synonymous, and the only real difference is whether or not that alderman is going to have a vote or not. So no matter what you call him, the real differentiating factor is whether he or she has a vote or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say maybe for consistency, and since we're already going to be amending the park board bill, and if you're still looking at the historical, do we want to potentially look at referring to it as an alderman liaison or an alderman representative, since that's already established in the tourism one, and we're not having to amend that one as well, since we already have two in the works? If that would be something easy to do. Again, just to be for consistency across.
Yes. Like I said, I think Attorney Jones was explaining that, I guess legally, there's no other references to liaison and alderman representative, so it would just be consistency for the sake of it, which I thought maybe there's other references to these terms in the code that you would need that consistency.
No, I'm not aware of others.
Anything else?
No.
All right. Then do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
I'm like, not all at once, guys and gals. I have a motion by Alderman Cleve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Alderman Presley. All right, meeting is adjourned.
Oh, we didn't vote on it.
We didn't vote on that.
Oh, shoot. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now the meeting is adjourned.
Oh, thank you, sir.